Every single day there's this massive, basically invisible trade route humming across the US-Canada border. But it's not carrying cars or lumber. It's carrying garbage. We're going to pull back the curtain on the really surprising story of why millions of tons of Canadian trash end up right in Michigan's backyard.
So it really all boils down to this one question people have been asking for years. And you'd think the answer would be simple, right? But it's not. It's actually this fascinating mess, all tangled up in economics, constitutional law, and some seriously high-stakes international politics. Okay, so here's the heart of the issue. Just look at this price difference. Michigan charges a state fee, they call it a tipping fee, of just 36 cents per ton of trash. Now, compare that to its neighbors. Ohio is at $4.75. Wisconsin, it can be as much as $13. This creates this huge economic incentive, a kind of financial arbitrage, really, that makes Michigan the absolute cheapest place in the whole region to get rid of garbage. It's a no-brainer for waste haulers.
And here is the direct result of that bargain basement price. In just one fiscal year, 2024, almost 3.5 million tons of Canadian trash, we're talking mostly industrial and commercial waste from Ontario, got trucked into Michigan. That's more than 14% of all the garbage buried in the entire state, all because of that tiny 36-cent fee. So to fix this, Governor Gretchen Whitmer came up with a pretty logical plan. Just raise the price. The idea was to bump that fee from a measly 36 cents all the way up to $5 a ton. You do that, and you basically slam the door on that economic loophole that makes Michigan so attractive.
And this wasn't just about stopping the flow of trash. Check this out. That fee increase was projected to bring in a cool $80 million in new revenue for the state. And that's not a one-time thing. That's every single year. That is a lot of money that could be put to some very critical use.
And boy, was that money needed. It was all earmarked for a program called Renew Michigan. The goal was to tackle the state's biggest environmental nightmares. Cleaning up over 24,000 contaminated sites, dealing with that nasty PFAS stuff, redeveloping old industrial land, and even funding local recycling efforts.
But here's the twist. Despite the obvious problem and all those potential benefits, the plan failed. It just got left out of the final state budget. So you have to ask yourself, what went wrong?
Because you're probably thinking what I'm thinking, right? It seems like such an easy fix. Why not just slap a higher fee on the trucks coming from Canada and call it a day? Well, the answer is this really surprising legal roadblock that has had the state's hands tied for decades.
That roadblock is something called the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution. And what it basically says is that the federal government, not individual states, gets to make the rules for trade that happens across state and international borders.
And this is where it gets really wild. Back in 1992, in a case that actually involved Michigan, the Supreme Court made a huge decision. They ruled that in the eyes of the law, garbage is a product. It's an article of commerce, just like corn or cars. And that means a state can't legally discriminate against it just because of where it came from.
So, do you see the trap Michigan was in? To stop the Canadian trash, the state had to raise the fee for everybody. And that's when lobbying groups swooped in and successfully branded the whole plan as a trash tax that would hurt Michigan's own families, hospitals, and businesses. That's the argument that killed the bill.
Okay, so the state-level plan is dead in the water. But the story is far from over. Because right around that same time, in the fall of 2025, the whole game was about to get turned on its head, this time by the federal government.
So the U.S. government rolls out this massive 40% transshipment penalty. Now, it wasn't even about trash, really. It was meant to stop other goods from sneaking through Canada to avoid tariffs. But think about what's inside a garbage truck, right? It's all mixed up. You got plastics made in one country, electronics from another, and all of a sudden, every single truckload of Canadian trash was at risk of getting hit with that absolutely crippling 40% penalty.
And that threat, that federal pressure, and the talk of just shutting down the border to garbage completely, well, it changed everything. Ontario's Premier Doug Ford said it himself. It was the primary catalyst that forced them to find their own solution, and to find it fast.
So Ontario went into crisis mode. The government passed this new law, Bill 5, and it did something pretty extreme. It basically bypassed all the normal environmental rules to fast-track the expansion of a landfill. It was a crystal clear signal that Ontario was getting ready for the border to slam shut.
And this chart right here shows you exactly why they were panicking. Look at the stakes. As long as they can ship trash to the U.S., their landfills last until 2037. But if that border closes, they're completely full by 2034. Losing Michigan as a safety valve shaves 3 whole years off their timeline. In the world of waste management, that is a catastrophe. But let's not forget, Michigan has its own clock ticking. With the current amount of trash they're taking in, including all that Canadian waste, the state has just 21 years of landfill space left. So it's not just Ontario that's running out of time. The clock is ticking loudly on both sides of the border.
And that leaves us right here, in this tense standoff caught between state laws, federal power, and international trade. And it brings up this huge, fundamental question that has no easy answer. When one country's trash becomes another country's problem, who is actually responsible for cleaning it up?